there's a lot of ex-Mormons now. And one of the things that they do is they move leftward in their politics, right? And I would, just to kind of, I guess, frame this as I talk about left and right, left is just a description of a move away from the status quo, right? Right is a tendency to want to basically react against the pull away from the status quo and be more cautious about our changes in the future. And so the leftward pull in our current sort of sociopolitical context is towards Marxist ideology.
I think throughout history, vast numbers of Marxist activists have been in that situation where they thought they were doing something good and were absolutely blindsided by what emerged, right?
Yeah, I mean, think about, I even think in Karl Marx's story, and you go over it so well in the book, is there's sort of this idea of we have an unfair world. It's in a way, as I look at it, it's almost like they're responding to the fallen nature of the world.
Yeah.
They're saying, look, things are not fair. People are disadvantaged. And what if we create a society that works together to solve that problem?
Yeah.
And it's sort of like, that doesn't sound like a bad thing.
Right.
You know?
Right.
That's a really good thing. And so the way I see it, it's sort of, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, to kind of steelman Marxism, as you kind of explained it, there's sort of, we look out at the world and we see inequities. We see unfairness. We see, things that we want to correct. And Marx's ideology is that these inequities are caused by systems of power that are, and his obviously was focused on the economic systems of power, the means of production, things like that. But the underlying ideology is kind of at its roots is saying there are systems of power, and these systems of power produce disparate outcomes and advantage some groups and disadvantage other groups.
Yeah.
And so we need to essentially get control of these systems of power in order to control them and alter them in such a way that they produce equity and fairness for all.
Right.
And on sort of a broad level, like this all, how does that lead to hundreds of millions of people dead? That sounds like, it sounds to me like this is something really good. Shouldn't this be the goal of society? Where's the disconnect here?
Right. And I'm glad you've said all this, because I think you can see why a Marxist message appeals to people, why it has throughout history. It's not like, Mao Zedong wanders into a village and the village is all monsters and so they follow him. No, I mean, there's this message of, hey, society can be more fair. We have a plan to do it. Nobody else does. Oh gosh, you can actually really have empathy for just kind of that impulse of wanting to make the world a better place and being, just seeing the amount of hurt in the world and how unfair it is sometimes. You can see why people gravitate toward this.
To understand this sort of Marxist impulse, a lot of ex-Mormons move towards that space.
Yes.
They move leftward in their politics. Why, I guess, how does this stuff that we're talking about apply to that sort of group of ex-Mormons that tend to move leftward?
So Marxism has different flavors, right? And there is a Maoist flavor of Marxism. And it's that which Mao Zedong in China, he kind of implemented his own flavor of Marxism. And in the Cultural Revolution in China, he taught this principle called the Four Olds, old culture. He was trying to get people to get rid of the past, like eliminate the past from their lives. And what ended up happening was he planted in people's hearts and minds this thing that you call an external locus of control in psychology. And in psychology, when they talk about the external locus of control, the basic idea is I cannot be happy as long as powerful others exist, or, like powerful institutions, they determine my happiness. Powerful other people, powerful old ideas, like Mao Zedong taught. Okay, so the opposite of an external locus of control is an internal locus of control, where you say, okay, I wake up in the morning, I can make my life better. Whatever else is going on in the world, I can be okay. I can do this, right? And so when you condition somebody for an external locus of control, that is regarded by psychologists as a measure of mental health. You're actually making them mentally ill. Okay. So Mao Zedong,
You're saying it makes them mentally ill when they start to move their locus of control out of themselves to
right.
where their well-being is determined by the social factors, right? It's like
Yeah.
and it's funny because I'm listening to this going, I can see this on both the right and the left, because
Oh,
there's sort
yeah.
of on the
Yes.
right side, it's sort of like the globalist elites, like,
Right.
I remember I met somebody on my mission, and this is maybe a little bit of a side tangent, but it relates to this. She was this little old lady, and I was on my mission during the Iraq War, and I went and knocked on her door, and she was, I could see she was really upset. We were talking to her. She's like, there's so many problems in the world, and there's a war in Iraq, and I could see it, like she was very upset. Like her day was like being ruined. And I couldn't help be like, lady, you're like a 7-year-old lady living in Argentina. Like, why are you allowing this stuff, this external locus of things in the world, destroy your life that you have?
Yes.
You have no control over these things. So you're saying that when people do that, psychologically, it's really bad for you to spend your entire life looking at everything around you instead of saying, hey, how do I respond?
Yeah. So imagine if we went to church and the church implemented a curriculum centered around the Missouri persecutions. And that's all we talked about.
Had that at a time. Just
well, imagine that's like all we talked about. And we would go to church and rehearse those grievances and rehearse it and rehearse it. And we would feel validated and feel this pain and this empathy for the suffering of our people way back when. And it would mess us up so badly. You know, we would feel empathy for the sufferings of the past and stuff like that. But we would become unfree. We would not be free. We would be just consumed by this narrative of grievance. And the narrative might even be true, but we would not be free.
See, and that's the tricky part with this, because there's a side to which I go, yeah, but there are real injustices that mess up people's lives.
Right.
So where is that line between an overemphasis and an underemphasis to where we're just, I guess as Karl Marx would say, just taking the opium of the masses that lulls us into a rebellion against things that should be rebelled against in the social systems.
Well, and that's why you can see in the book, I quote several people around Marx who were very hostile toward Christianity. Because if you look at the example of Christ, if Christ had an external locus of control, he would be teaching his followers to obsess about Rome. You can't be happy because Rome is in charge. You cannot be happy. You cannot enjoy life as long as Rome is running the show here, as long as we're a vassal state to Rome. And that would cultivate an external locus of control, and his followers would have been miserable. He never did that. Rome was just this afterthought, like, hey, we've got things to do. We're going to go heal people. We're going to go do amazing things every single day. That was Christ's internal locus of control. Yeah, we're under this oppressive system, but let's go out today and do amazing things together.
Well, and it's funny because the kind of ultimate anti-Marxist Latter-day Saint leader, Ezra Taft Benson, his most famous quote that I always quote all the time is exactly on that topic. It says that the world works from the outside in, but the Lord works from the inside out.
Right.
And he changes us, and then we go change the world. But the focus of changing the world, it starts with you and getting yourself right. And so I guess it's sort of like the old 80-20 rule. A Marxist puts 80% or more, for the real extreme ones, of their focus outside of themselves, where a Christian, it's not that they don't care about the outside world. It's just that it's flipped to say, look, the most important work that you do is the work in your own soul and in your own home. Don't go out trying to, and this is a Jordan Peterson sort of thing. You hear him saying all the time, is sort of like, I think it diagnoses that as a problem in our society today, where people are so focused on these external things and their room isn't clean.
Right.
Hey guys, if you enjoyed this video, be sure to hit that subscribe button so my future videos show up on your feed. Also, if you or someone that you know has benefited from the content here on Thoughtful Faith, please consider becoming a channel donor or volunteer by visiting my new website, thoughtfulfaith.org, and clicking on the Get Involved page.